on that statement, chapter 6, statement 5 of the Gongchik. So let's see. So if you have the physical book, we are around page 549, 550. And then if you have ebook or a version or pages from the ebook, and this is in the notes section for statement 5 on chapter 6. So that, you know, we've been looking at this point, and on Wednesday, I think we were talking about how, although, you know, if you want to follow, or if you want to kind of like, in one way, you know, logically go through the reasoning, then you're going to find, you know, I'm sure, some contradictions here. But it's sort of the broader point that is being made by statement 5. Statement 5 and statement is certainly also related to statement 4, in the sense that that which does not exist in the fundamental nature of that thing, something cannot be turned into something else merely by a way of looking at it. So here then, you know, it makes sense, right, for us to kind of revisit the story about the tooth, and the tooth, the dog tooth that serve as a support for the woman's great faith. So you can say that the great faith is the great faith that is actually great faith or confidence towards Buddha, and not so much towards the tooth. If it is towards the tooth, then of course the tooth belongs to a random dog that passed away. Then the tooth cannot cause any qualities, so to say, to arise. So I think that much we can agree, that's part of the logic. But here, admittedly, in the commentaries, they seem to be introducing examples and counter examples just when you think they are going in one direction, then suddenly it seems to shift in another direction. You know, I will admit that. You know, but it's worth, you know, looking at each of the sections and just to see what we can mine from there, right? What we can extract from there that can be useful to help us to understand and to approach this question. So I want to continue on page 549. We talked about how Pamadrupa says, you know, if there is no pattern on the mold, there will also be no pattern on the clay ball. Yeah. So then the Dorshema, it says, you know, provide 3 reasons. And I think when we look at these reasons, again, there's some kind of interesting points raised here. So it says, in order to arise, phenomena require causes and conditions. A result cannot arise from a single cause or a single condition alone. So causes and conditions are always in the plural. Yeah? No single cause or no single condition can cause something to happen. The cause for realization, which is the pure special motivation, might exist. But if the condition which is the guru endowed with characteristics, is lacking, realization does not arise. Here, more specifically, again, is talking about realizing nature of mind, seeing nature of mind. I should say that. When it talks about realization, it's not talking about, so in that way, it's somewhat different from the woman receiving blessings from the Buddha through her faith, and light is pouring out from the house. Those are, in fact, you can say mundane signs of encouragement that you could produce. Here, more specifically, this statement, fundamentally, as I say, the specific concern is really about, insofar as realizing nature of mind goes, you should understand that someone who has not seen this nature of mind cannot be the contributing condition that is needed for you to see the nature of your mind. And so here, the cause for realization, meaning this will have to come from the student, is pure special motivation. And also pure devotion. Motivation here covers devotion. So he says, so this might exist, but if the condition, which is a guru endowed with characteristics, meaning this characteristics here would include things like this guru, him or her, have realized the nature of mind, and also have the ability to introduce that seeing to fortunate disciples. If those two things don't exist and exist in the same place, in the same situation, then realization does not arise. First point. Second point, one's supreme, medium, or lower accumulation of merit determines the guru's good, medium, or inferior qualities. So now the plot thickens. So it says, then what kind of guru that you are going to meet up with, it's also a result that arose out of causes and conditions. The causes and conditions for us to meet a guru with good qualities depends on our having accumulated supreme merit. The causes and conditions of us meeting medium or inferior qualities guru also comes from our medium or lower accumulation of merit. And our causes and the result of meeting completely charlatan gurus also comes from our having created the causes and conditions of that result. So it's saying, we should not fail to see that as well. That is a point as well. So in other words, you cannot just, as much as heavy responsibility is placed on the teachers, this statement 5 could be a statement made for teachers to understand, You cannot make the excuse of saying, as long as my disciples have pure faith, have supreme motivation, then it doesn't matter so much what I am or I am not. It is up to them. Teachers who say things like that and start to believe things like that, they are going down a slippery slope. So as much as that is true, yeah, as much as that's important, there is something else to consider, which is here to also recognize, now as a student, to recognize, if you say, oh, I don't know, this guru that I'm with is kind of disappointing. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. But also understand, wait, you didn't for no rhyme or reason end up with a meh kind of guru. You have the conditions and the causes to meet a guru that's going to be wasting your time. So there's this story of Gongchik MAY talking about, he said, one time he was in Bodh Gaya and he saw this one teacher with a group of students, and probably, he said, from mainland China. Mainland China right now, there's a lot of these Buddhist teachers. Some are Chinese, some are Tibetan, They basically declare themselves to be this and that, insinuate or even outright say, I'm an emanation of a bodhisattva and this and that. And so then they start their brand of Dharma, which is often a mix of true Dharma that they have learned and also kind of weird stuff that they have, come up with themselves, and often very bombastic and often very showy. In fact, when I was there 2 years ago with His Holiness, around this time, 2 years ago, we went to Bodh Gaya and His Holiness was painting gold on the statue there. One afternoon, as I was leaving with some people, His Holiness wasn't there. It was in the afternoon. Usually he takes a break, a rest in the hotel. As we were leaving, there was this procession of we think Tibetan Lama, but with Chinese disciples and patrons. And it was basically a procession whereby there are like two sort of chariots. The front chariot, the fancier one, sat the guru, and the one behind was clearly the financier, the donor, husband and wife. And then there was like two lines of young Indian men on their motorcycles, blaring their horns like as escort. And then there's the rest of this Lama's Chinese disciples following behind. And they were like throwing flower petals, and they were making this procession down the road to the main Bodhi tree. And he is like the guru with a begging bowl filled with water and with a sprinkler, blessing everyone along the road, whether you want to be blessed or not, doesn't matter, because he's sprinkling his holy water. And then his patrons back there are waving and looking very proud. Of course, the locals, are just humoring these idiots, and they're like, yeah, do whatever you want, I mean, in a way, they're like, yeah, you're going to give some donations to us. All the beggars came. It's like, hey, there's money to collect, whatever, if you want, if you're deluded, you want to be deluded, you want to delude people, that's your karma. Okay. So yeah, we watch, I watched, I was like, oh, okay. And I felt, maybe it's just my own projection. I felt like, the guy was looking at me because we stayed in the same hotel. And His Holiness, the night before during dinner, we were having dinner in the hotel restaurant. During that season, Bodh Gaya is practically empty because it's very hot. So we were in the hotel, and then they came in with a lot of, again, hoo-ha. But immediately when the Lama saw His Holiness, he kind of shrunk. You could sort of feel him shrinking into a corner, kind of hiding in the corner and kind of trying to be low-key, while his disciples didn't catch the cue. They were like, whoa, and you could tell, So I'm sure he noticed, I was with His Holiness. So the next day when he was doing this fanfare with his, parade down, so I just stood there and stared at him, I really did stare at him, and he didn't want to look in my direction. You have people like that, Anyway, back to the thing. So Gongchik Khyentse, he said, he thought, oh gosh, poor thing, all these students, they are stuck with this kind of teacher. Then he said, then I also thought, well, I do wonder though, what kind of negative karma these guys created so that now, their time and resources and devotion is wasted upon this kind of charlatan teacher. Because Gongchik Khyentse said he kind of leaned over to listen to see what that Lama is teaching. And he said the Lama continuously is just talking about how great he is, how great he is, how great he is, how special he is, what kind of realization he has, what kind of magical powers he has, continuously just talking about that. So at first, Gongchik Khyentse said, oh, poor people, Then he said, but then to think a little bit more, surely these people, must have wasted his time and his resources in a previous lifetime. So now they have to come back together and work this karma out. So there's also that perspective. Yeah? Now be careful, this perspective should never be used to, as we say, blame the victim. As much as karma is so complicated, many connections, many generations, it's not just what's happening now, as much as that is true. I also see in recent times, when actions of misbehaving lamas have been exposed, right, you have their colleagues defend them by saying, well, this is also the students' negative karma. They should think about it. But I think it's completely unskillful to make public statements like this. If you really care about this, if it's really from the heart, then you go seek out the disciples that are hurting and help them. But making these public pronouncements that are in fact beating the victims, the victims at this point of cause and effect, right? Yeah. So then, for us to have a more complete understanding, we also cannot say, immediately, oh, that's just, blaming the victims. This is terrible. This is, how unjust. Da, 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 da. Now, that position also, from the Dharma perspective, is also mistaken, as in limited. Who is victim? Who is aggressor? At a certain point in the complicated karmic causes and conditions, it looks like this. Then at the next point, it can look like that. But on the relative level, always remember, do not cause harm. Do not cause harm to yourself. Do not cause harm to other people. Then we come back here, second point. Therefore, if one perceives a guru who is lacking characteristics, that is only due to one's inferior roots of virtue. Thus, qualities cannot arise if the guru lacks qualities, since that is a sign of one's own lack of qualities. You see where this is going? Yeah, the second point. Another reason, he says, why qualities cannot arise if the guru lacks qualities. Why? Because it is a sign that the student is also lacking merit. So this is the interdependence that is involved. Third point, even if the disciple's mental continuum is pure, so another scenario, The qualities that arise cannot be beyond the guru's qualities because of the dependent origination of the mold and the clay ball. Now, this I think we can footnote and say, however, it is likely that the student might have other influencing forces, perhaps other gurus that can cause the qualities to arise. I would footnote this third point. Note that here, following the Rinjangma, the cause for realization is the pure special motivation, which includes devotion on the side of the student, and the condition is the guru endowed with characteristics. So this is classic Kakyu Mahamudra. It says that, to realize the nature of mind, these two things have to come together. In the next Vajra statement, 6.6, the means for producing realization will be taught to be ultimate devotion. In the Tencho Chintamani, an important teaching from Gyalpa Rinpoche, Gyalpa Rinpoche splits up the condition into two aspects, which is the condition of the guru with characteristics. The self aspect is one's accumulation of merit, and the other aspect is the guru. The condition of ultimate devotion, realization. In Chintamani, which Khenchen Rinpoche right now is teaching in Nepal, Chintamani. It's being live streamed, but no translation. So if you don't know Tibetan, then make aspirations for next lifetime. Or make aspirations for somebody at some point, translating all of that and putting the subtitles, So Jigten Sumgun splits up the condition into two aspects. The self aspect is one's accumulation of merit. The other aspect is the guru. Our present text and the Dorshema deviate slightly from that presentation. So Sobish points out this. The Dorshema mentions that the cause is devotion, although it will teach in 6.6 that devotion is the means. And so here is kind of looking at the finer details, which is the cause, which is the condition, which is the means, and all that. Yeah? And in agreement with the Rinjangma that the condition is the guru endowed with characteristics. Choki Drakpa generally states that the guru who possesses the characteristics and the disciple who possesses faith are the principal cause. So anyway, this is just finer details, In some place they are called cause, in some place they are called condition. Bottom line, these two condition causes, these two elements have to be present. Guru with qualities of realization and skill, student with merit and devotion. These two have to come together. When one is about to form a connection with a guru, it is necessary to act with great care. If one loses respect for him because one sees a fault in him, later on, when one attends other gurus that one believes to be without a fault, one will not generate qualities. This is like the story of Nakshu Gyalzhung. Accordingly, an elder from Nakshu, one area, named Gyalzhung, came to Pamodrupa to request instructions on a practice. When he was unable to master it, he asked Pamodrupa what the problem was. Questioning him, Pamodrupa found out that Nakshu had once promised to give a Prajnaparamita text and a field to another teacher in exchange for some instructions on sadhana practice. So this person, Gyalzhung, he has a text. Back in the day, texts are very precious, not easy to come by. So he has this text, and he has a field, some land, that he promised to a teacher that he was going to offer to them in return for that teacher teaching him how to practice deity yoga. However, when he realized that the teacher was not up to his expectations, so then he started to get instructions from the teacher. Then while getting instructions, he was like, oh, this guy don't really know what he's talking about. Yeah. He sold the field and took the money and the book and gave both to Pamadrupa. Yeah. Now, we might say, oh yeah, that's the right decision. He realized, that the first teacher he asked, is not qualified. So now instead, what he promised this unqualified teacher, now he's going to take this and he's going to offer it to Pamadrupa. Pamadrupa ordered him to take the book and the money and offer it to the surviving sisters of the former master. And so that master has passed on. Pamadrupa said, no. I cannot take what you gave me. I'm giving it back to you. And you need to settle this debt. Because you promise. And when you promise this person, the point here is, when he promised this person, he was giving it to a teacher. So the principle of the teacher that he promised this offering to. Then when the person did not, and even when the person did not kind of live up to the principle, it doesn't mean that then the student can break this pledge, because the pledge was made too in the student's mind, right? The qualified guru. So this is also saying, don't so quickly think, on the basis of reputation, how many people are following them and this and that, that, this person, must be a qualified, perfect guru. Don't so quickly make that jump. Yeah. And then go promise things. Because what you are promising to is the principle of the perfect guru. And later, when the person doesn't match the principle, it will damage your conviction in that principle. This understanding, don't forget the broader context. Yes, the broader context is still, we train to perceive everybody as pure and perfect. It doesn't contradict this point that is being made here. Just because on the broader context, we are training to see all beings as Buddhas in our sadhana training, it doesn't mean then, when it comes to this important element in Dharma practice, in carefully selecting teachers, making a connection to the teacher, that you give up discernment. Then to have discernment also doesn't mean you badmouth past teachers that you now feel did not live up to your reputation, your expectation. So you see so many, right? Pieces, parts. But these days, the social discourse, the political discourse is forcing all of us into, you either agree with me or you disagree with me. then also like single issue voters, as some people would call, and bumper sticker, reduce everything to a bumper sticker, to a meme. And if you don't speak out against this, that means you are for that. All of that too unrefined, too crude. So Pamodrupa ordered him to take the book and the money and offer it to the surviving sisters of that former master. After Nakshu had done so, he again received instructions in Pamodru and succeeded in developing qualities. It's almost like saying, in the end, it is saying in the end, it doesn't matter, whether the other person deserves it or not, qualifies or not. You have to do the right thing. Now, it's very different if you promise the perfect guru that you're going to go kill someone and then later decide not to kill. In that scenario, it's always good to decide not to kill. It's not saying, now you go carry it out, the promise that you have pledged to the guru. No, yeah. Dorje Sherab explains that even if one is devoted to an inferior guru, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will bless one. Yeah. And later, that will be the cause for meeting with a guru who is endowed with characteristics, as in the case of Lord Pamodrupa. So here is saying, even if, of course, again, it's saying, look carefully. If you look carefully and this and that, and then you started learning from and developing, trust in someone, and then later on you feel, they don't have, it's saying, don't think it's wasted either. Yeah. Because remember that you were attracted to the principle, that the person, even if the person has failed to live up to it, don't like denigrate that person. This refers to the time during which Pamodrupa had been fully devoted to other masters. So actually here, the case of Pamodrupa is not talking about the Nakshu, the student case, but in Pamodrupa's own case, he had been fully devoted to other masters. Actually, he was a Sakyapa, Pamodrupa. He was one of the great disciples of Sakya Pandita's uncle, either uncle or granduncle. Pamodrupa was one of the chief disciples. But then he heard about Gampopa, and in fact, he wanted to go debate Gampopa. So he went to see Gampopa. So the story says that he went to see Gampopa. He himself was already a great master, Pamodrupa. So he went to see Gampopa. And so, of course, Pamodrupa was very well schooled, a master debater, logic, have learned all the sutras and tantras. And especially in the Sakyapa tradition, they really have mastered like the tantric commentaries, as well as Madhyamaka philosophy. They were masters of like knowledge. Not as an insult, to call them masters of knowledge, but really they have mastered learning. And Pamodrupa is said to be one of the key people in that tradition. But at the same time, Gampopa was gaining a lot of disciples. So Pamodrupa felt, I need to go see this, What is so amazing about this person, Gampopa? As far as we know, he's not really very learned, you know. What does he know? You know, and why are all these people following him? In fact, during the empowerment last night, for us last night, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is formally, officially, for the first time, doing virtual empowerment. In the last year or so, his public empowerment given to thousands of people have been live casted. Yeah, but there is almost like you could say is the camera is just like a fly on the wall, live casting what's going on. But this one, he's doing it as a virtual empowerment. Yeah? So in there, at one point, he's looking at the empowerment text he's using. Then at one point, he giggled. He said, "Oh, Lama so and so," and then I didn't catch the author of the empowerment text. He said, "Oh, this teacher, he's a great Lama, but not such a great scholar." And so there's a difference, And he kind of laughed. He said, he's a great Lama, but not such a great scholar. And he said, this term that he used here, and it's a little off. Yeah. So he kind of laughed, and that's fine, So anyway, Pamodrupa went to see Gampopa, kind of very proud, right? He's going to maybe debate Gampopa, So it's said that when he arrived, Gampopa was having lunch. So lunch, typical lunch is roasted barley flour, cereal, mixed with tea, made into a lump, and then you might dip some spices or salt or butter, and then you eat, So it's a piece of tsampa. So he's eating. So Pamodrupa comes and wanted to debate Gampopa, or at least wanted to check Gampopa out. So finally Gampopa, kind of entertained him and asked him where you're from, this and that. And he said, oh. So Gampopa said, so you're a great scholar. And then he said, so what realizations do you have at this point? Gampopa asked Pamodrupa. And Pamodrupa said, my teacher said, I have arrived at the first bhumi. Very bold statement. Which is probably true, I don't think Pamodrupa would make that up. That he's on the first of the 10 bhumis of bodhisattvas. Then Gampopa kind of smiled. Gampopa said, this mouthful of tsampa is worth more than your first bhumi. And he ate it, That kind of like confidence, pride, it said that shocked Pamodrupa. His Pamodrupa's own pride and satisfaction that his teacher said he has arrived at the first bhumi. Gampopa said, basically, my mouthful of, food here is worth than your so-called first bhumi. And said then Pamodrupa was shaken. And I would say perhaps the fact of being shaken, right, by like an insult like this, I think is what got Pamodrupa to realize, well, that's a good sign I'm not on the first bhumi, right? And so luckily, Pamodrupa recognized that, And Pamodrupa then, so it is said he never went back. He stayed with Gampopa and became one of Gampopa's chief disciples. So this is the case, right? So this refers to the time during which Pamodrupa had been fully devoted to other masters. When he finally met Gampopa, there was no damage to pledges with his former masters to impede him. And that means Pamudrupa, even though he switched to Gampopa, he never looked down on his previous masters. Because, so the point is, if we relate to our teachers as individuals, and then become devoted to them as individuals, rather to the principle that they embody, then we are liable to liking them, disliking them, thinking great of them, thinking bad of them. Then all sorts of karma gets created accordingly. But if we keep that view clear, that with regards to this person, what this person's job is to constantly point to the Guru principle. And my faith and devotion should be to the principle. So much so that, in a way, however this person lives up or doesn't live up to it, I have to remember the principle that I am honoring and respecting and serving. So Dorje Sherab says, therefore, if people like us, apart from our own principal gurus, disrespect other gurus, the qualities will not arise in the presence of the aforementioned guru. So this is really important. Therefore, if people like us, apart from our own principal guru, then disrespect other gurus, the qualities will not arise in the presence of the aforementioned guru. And disrespect other gurus as in our gurus. It's not talking about disrespecting, other lamas. There are issues, of course, with disrespecting other lamas that have nothing to do with you. But here is saying, meaning, so don't think, oh, I have now found my primary guru, and then those before, they're not, not such a big deal. Those were just mistakes. I had to, go through a few mistakes before I arrived at here. I remember many years ago, somebody, I know this person, they studied with, some of my teachers. Then some great Lama appears, and then they have become like, one of the main people around this big Lama. I remember very clearly, on the way going somewhere as part of the entourage of this great Lama, the driver was saying something like, oh, I studied with so-and-so teacher, so-and-so Kempo. Then this other person, now this star student of this great Lama, kind of dismissively, there's that tone clearly, saying something like, oh, yeah, that Lama, he's an adequate refuge teacher. Like, if you're just going to take refuge, yeah, he's sufficient. And I thought, even back then, I thought, oh, wow, I'm like, it doesn't look good on this Lama you have now, actually. That's my, judgment mind. If you behave like this, don't say things like this. So finally, he quotes Jigten Sumgun, who said, and so elsewhere Jigten Sumgun taught, we do not follow the opinion that a contamination, that dripa arises through devotion to an inferior guru. We do not follow the opinion that harm arises from making offerings to such a guru. And we also do not follow the opinion that looking at the bad as something good is a wrong view. So here again, don't quote this out of context. Yeah. This point being made here is, so here, right, even when it says inferior guru, I'm very sure it's not talking about bad gurus. It's just the gurus who do not have all the qualities. Yeah. And that, looking at the bad as something good is wrong view. Now, I'm sure Jigten Sumgon would agree that it is wrong view, right? To look at killing and say, oh, that is good. To look at stealing and say, oh, that is good. Right? I'm sure Jigten Sumgon will say that's wrong view. Here, bad has more to do with something that doesn't, say live up to your expectations, something that doesn't disagreeable with you, that you should turn your perspective, you should turn your understanding, that you are disagreeable with this, that this brings you suffering. Why? Turn around and look at that. So finally, thus when one is devoted to an inferior guru, or rather, a guru without all the, excellent characteristics, one may not develop the qualities in his or her presence, but that devotion itself, through which the pledges, the samaya, remain intact, will be the cause of meeting a perfect guru in whose presence the qualities will arise without impediment. So 6.5. 6.6, which we won't go into today, but just as a preview, it is certain that the only means of cultivating realization, here again, realization of nature of mind, is devotion. So lots of notes given on this point. So we will look at this 6.6. Then I think after that, we're going to back to chapter 1. So we will work through 6.6 and not go into 6.7. We'll go back to chapter 1 where we left off. Any questions or comments? Yes, no? Again tonight, Eastern time, New York time, 11 p.m. If you can stay up that late, His Holiness Dalai Lama will give the second part, which is the main part of the Avalokiteshvara empowerment. Again, if you ask me, can or can you not receive? Well, it depends on you. Can or cannot, well, don't know, because the Tantras did not talk about the internet. But the Tantras did talk about, lamas and individuals receiving visions of previous lamas and previous and deities, and in those visions receiving empowerment. How different or similar it is with the internet, you have to decide. So if no questions, happy Friday. And tomorrow and Sunday, we still have, right, the home retreat. So tomorrow we will do the 16 arats. Make sure you have the right text. I'll make sure that I have the right text. Nathan has created this landing page with all the text that we need. And Ellen is almost done fixing the text. And so once we have checked many times, I joke with Ellen, and also waiting in Malaysia is helping. I joke with both of them. I said, the making of this text could turn into their ngondro. So they have 99,993 more tries. And when it's 100,000, then the text will be perfect. Changchu Semchu Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam gyurji geba nyamba meba yang gong ne gong du belwar sho.
Selamat malam.
Selamat malam.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.